Hello, and welcome to the third installment of Distilled Wisdom. I'm William Friedman, author most recently of Mighty Mighty by Rebel E Publishers, and the object here is to go to conventions so you don't have to. Sit in on some interesting panels and just distill the wisdom of some of the speakers there, and in the meantime, enjoy some distilled spirits like Jack Heen's Rock and Rye. That's how it's pronounced, Jack Heen's. No, it's not. It's Jackins. Jackins, Jackeen, something like that. This is a Philadelphia old man's bar cordial, and it's what Rock and Rye basically breaks down to is rye whiskey. I believe it's Michter's. I'm not 100% sure, and rock sugar. And as you can see in the bottom of the bottle, there is some pickled fruit for flavor, and it's delicious. It's a great summer drink, and goes down smooth. And I don't have to apologize to anyone. I just happen to like it. An old man from Pennsylvania, maybe that's why. Kudos to my friend Frank Clever, who is at this moment reading Mighty Mighty and probably enjoying a Rock and Rye. And he reintroduced me to it after all these years. Anyway, so just came back from LICon 2, and it's the placeholder for the eventual comeback, I hope, of Icon. I would really like to see that ConCom get it together, have a permanent place, and not at that particular hotel. If you've gone to Icon and you remember the Holiday Inn, thought it couldn't get any worse. Well, Clarion bought it, and now it's worse. So they really do have to find a new home, and I hope they do, because there is such a huge science fiction and fantasy and cosplay and gaming presence on Long Island that really it's a no-brainer. The market can support a fan convention. It's just a matter of will and money and time, and I think it will happen. In the meantime, LICon did have some good guests, and the author's track was actually taken a little off track by events that are nobody's fault. But the author's track was pulled together last minute. But even so, got some good names there. Now, I'm going to be talking about a panel that I attended and just sat in the cheap seats and took notes. It's called What Not to Do While Writing. And on the panel was Richard Herr, a fellow science fiction fantasy satirist with whom I did a panel together. I believe that was on Remembrance of Terry Pratchett. And there was also a mid-grade writer who served as moderator by the name of Mackenzie Reed, who I've not heard of before, but I expect to hear from again and again. There was the prolific novelist / game designer Aaron Rosenberg, Star Trek writer David Mack, and Star Trek legend Peter David sitting on this panel. Not bad for something that really kind of congealed in the last few days before the convention. So let's start with Aaron Rosenberg's words of wisdom. His first don't is don't not finish. Kind of self-explanatory there. Then he also said, and this is kind of more on a practical matter, don't assume that you're ever going to see a dime in royalties. Advances are everything. Don't assume you're going to get paid anything beyond your advance, which I think is just good budgeting advice. And he also gave a lot of good advice on writing fast. In order to get in the habit of writing fast, he says, write more, understand that the rough draft is your friend, and just tell yourself the story first, and that's all the first draft has to be. And also make sure that you've got some forward momentum. And basically he's talking about people who write 3 chapters and then rewrite the second chapter because it didn't fit right, and then they remembered something they meant to put in the first chapter, so they rewrite the first chapter, then they rewrite the third chapter, and then they have to rewrite the first chapter again, to which I just kind of thought to myself, oh, so you met my first crit group. And that has been a big problem for a lot of writers that I know of, just not writing the same chapters over and over and actually making forward progress through the story arc. And the last thing that Aaron Rosenberg recommended was that you should be well aware of two different speeds at which you write. Your base speed, the speed at which you feel comfortable uh, putting forth an original work, whether that's like 8 weeks or 12 weeks to put together a 50 to 60,000 word book, or if you need 6 months to do it, just admit that to yourself and know what your time frame is. But he also says know your balls to the wall speed, where if somebody calls you with an unreasonable deadline and wants you to have 50,000 words within the next 8 weeks, you got to know whether or not you can do it, or whether or not you should just look the editor in the eye and say, "You want fries with that?" But know whether or not you can deliver, and how soon. So let's take a look at what David Mack had to say. The first thing he had to say is don't write for the market. Don't write something just because you think it's going to sell. And that's just plain good advice. Write what's in your heart, and if you're telling a good story and you're a good writer, the market will find you, or not, and but at least you'll not feel like you've wasted your time. And he also suggested don't quit your day job. Good advice. Don't live in New York City. Well, boy, I wish I would have listened to him before then. I live out here in the suburbs. It's plenty expensive here. Because understand you're not going to be paid much, but another thing that David Mack had to say is don't write for free. Money flows to the writer in all cases. Don't pay agents for reading fees. I mean, it's one thing if you're paying a professional editor with a track record to take a look at your manuscript before you start submitting, but your agent is not in that business. Your agent is in the business of selling your work, not buying it. So let's see what else did he have to say. Nothing, absolutely nothing worth. Oh no, he did say one more thing. Don't commit to projects you can't do. Stay in your skill set. You know, pretty much what Aaron had to say. So that brings us to Peter David, who was absolutely the star of the show there, and the first thing that this most famous of franchise writers had to say is don't aspire to write for a shared universe. He wrote for Star Trek because the producers of Star Trek paid him. You know, they took him to lunch and offered him a deal to write for Star Trek. They did that based on his earlier work. Do the work, and if you end up getting a contract to write in a shared universe, do it, but don't set out to do that. What else do I have to say? Don't dawdle. He actually, the term he used to describe what your writing should be is expeditiously. Write expeditiously was his really big advice, and that's the advice that I need to start taking. Okay, what else? Well, that's the high points of what he said. I would also point out a few things that Richard Herr and Mackenzie Reed and pretty much all of the panelists had to say, and that is it used to be don't self-publish. Now it's not so big a deal, but understand that if you are self-publishing, you are, and I think Aaron Rosenberg coined this phrase, I am the CEO and janitor. So you've got to do everything. So make sure you can commit to doing things that are outside of your interests and outside of your skill sets as a writer if you're going to self-publish. And don't self-publish by yourself. I guess what I would throw in here is make sure that you know a lawyer, that you know an accountant, and on the business side, and that you know a cover artist and an interior a book interior designer, so that it doesn't look like you did it on the cheap, and know somebody who knows something about distribution, and you can often rely on your peers within the up and coming sci-fi and fantasy writing community. People have learned these lessons before, and a lot of them would be happy to share them with you. So I think that about does it for now. I do have a backlog. I've got something to report from the final PyCon 9. It was a great time, and fortunately, it's being reborn as RoCon for next year. So the tradition is going to continue, and was very glad to hear that. And I even found something in my files from Arisia. So I've got two in the trunk here. Then I'll get to them just as soon as I can. In the meantime, pour yourself Jackin's Rock and Rye and read Mighty Mighty by Reveille Publishers and yours truly. And may the best of your yesterdays be the worst of your tomorrows.